On this Native Report, we introduce you to an Ojibwe language teacher receiving recognition for the good work she's doing in her community.
And what would life have been like if colonization never happened in the Americas? A Native-made fantasy role-playing book game explores just that.
Plus, we meet the creator of the New Adventures of Super Indian comic series, which is all about a Native superhero.
We need to be telling our stories, and I think that's really the most important aspect of doing comics, is like being able to tell your own story.
We also learn what we can do to lead healthier lives and hear from our elders.
Production for Native Report is made possible by grants from the Blandin Foundation, Anishinaabe Fund, and Alexandra Smith Fund, in support of Native American treaty rights, administered through the Duluth Superior Area Community Foundation. And the generous support from viewers like Jack and Sharon Kemp.
Welcome to Native Report, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Ernie Stevens.
Thanks, Ernie. I'm Rita Karppinen. In this episode, we're hearing from several curators of cultural tradition. These modern keepers of knowledge are using education, technology, and trends to carry on traditions.
We'll start with our visit with an Ojibwe language teacher at a Duluth school. The Bed River Trouble member has a passion for language preservation and science. We sat in as she taught an Ojibwe language-based science lesson.
My mom personally exposed me to a lot of cultural activities, and my dad brought me to a lot of cultural activities and language events. So I did grow up experiencing lots of legends and storytelling and ceremonies where I heard a lot of language, and I think that in part is what helped me learn it easier as I got older. Buju nitsa gagi gana kodikoindigu. Bijua aun dudem mashkizibing nindunjiba menawa onegamitsing nindanungum. My name is Gagi Anakodikwe, but my students call me Anakodikwe. And we are here in my 2nd and 3rd grade Ojibwe immersion classroom. We have a full day of Ojibwe immersion here, so we don't use any English at all. And everything that they are learning about in the school and state standards is in Ojibwe through our cultural curriculum. Anishinaabe Gizasu Mazanaigan. Ishkwa again demotawad. Inga anokimen oma anakani. We're not the first Ojibwe immersion program, but we are the first one working with Duluth Public Schools specific curriculum. We follow the 13-moon Ojibwe calendar, and we teach all of the standards through cultural activities of what Anishinaabe people are learning about or our cultural teachings at that time of year. So right away when the students start in August and September, we're learning about ricing. In the wintertime, we do Ad Sukanag or legends, and we are also studying things like snowshoeing and animal tracks. And in the springtime, we study sugar bush. I don't necessarily think that they would be exposed to all of that if they were following the public school curriculum. Basic ashinis, huwanashke inu ashiniswi nibagiza sug basic kinunawin. Maybe some people think Anishinaabe weren't scientists, but we were. Science is essentially understanding and discovering patterns, not just what's happening in the stars, but how does light work? What is going on at different parts of the year with patterns with the seasons? That is deeply engraved in our culture. So I really like thinking about concepts of how do we talk about those things in the Ojibwe language. And I work with certain elders that are first language speakers, so they have a deep understanding of the language. And I also work with other second language speakers that are teachers. Instead of translating directly from English, what we do is we look at the deeper word root, or what the word is trying to describe behind the scientific process. For instance, our word for gas, when we're learning about solids, liquids, and gases, is jagawe sewin. And the root meaning of jagawe is that of the intrinsic property of something to sort of spread out into the container that it's filling, which is essentially what a gas means. So today we are learning about the water cycle. We called it Asia Anji Singnebe. Nigigo Big is condensation. Asia Bud is precipitation. Mawanjibigisin is collection. And some other really awesome lessons that we do, we learn about animal life cycles in Ojibwe. The solar system is one of my personal favorites to teach because we are integrating words in Ojibwe about how to talk about gravity, planets, atmospheres, stars, star lifetimes, all those things. Another great lesson that we're learning about is properties of light. We have a great lesson that we've designed where students use mini lasers with either wooden blocks or mirrors or different shapes of glass, and they draw how the light rays travel. And we learn how to talk about it all in the language. And we relate it to cultural teachings, actually, about how Anishinaabe would use those teachings to spearfish long ago. Even though we didn't have the equation necessarily written down, we had that understanding about the physics of light because we would use it when we spearfished. We knew that the light rays were bent when they were traveling through ice and water, so we knew that we had to aim the spear at a different angle. What I've been studying partly in college and I hope to do for later in my career is studying astrophysics and physics. The field of astronomy is actually the least diverse of all the sciences, and it is very underrepresented, especially in the Native American population. I think about worldwide, there's only about 7,000 official astronomers total, and only a very small percentage of that is Native American. They think that by introducing and helping minorities and Native Americans be represented more in astronomy and the other scientific fields, that our perspectives and our unique ways of looking at things, which does come from our languages and our cultures, will help us solve problems that they previously could not solve.
Here's a fun fact. Winona recently was acknowledged in the Duluth News-Tribune's list of 20 under 40, which recognizes younger movers and shakers who make a positive change in their community.
We used to always share all our chores. And one morning, I was still sleeping, and my dad would always go away to work. He was never hardly home. So it was my turn to go outside and get wood for my mom so she could build a fire and cook breakfast. And I was crying because I didn't want to go outside. Went out without shoes. And I started chopping up the wood just to make little tiny sticks. Then I hit my toe and split it about that much. And she wrapped it up. I come running in because I was bleeding. And she looked at it and she got kind of mad because I was careless. So she tore up a sheet and she chewed some snuff. And she put it on my wound. And she wrapped it. And it healed. I didn't have to cut wood after that. I was relieved of the duty because of what happened.
Life is stressful, and that contributes to high blood pressure and increased mortality. Stress causes the release of cortisol from the adrenal glands. Cortisol increases blood sugar and is the primary stress hormone. Your adrenal glands also release adrenaline or epinephrine. This raises your blood pressure, increases your heart rate, and gets you ready to respond if you need fight or flight. Your body is wired to protect you against threats such as predators and physical assault. These types of threats are rare nowadays, but stresses from work, money, social media, and political strife trigger this system many times a day. It's easy to feel as if we're constantly under attack. One of the best medicines to reduce stress is a simple hug. Your grandmother knew this, and science is catching up with her. Oxytocin is a chemical in our bodies that can reduce blood pressure and heart rate. Oxytocin levels rise when we hug or sit close to someone else. Oxytocin is associated with happiness and decreased stress. Hugs benefit the giver and the recipient, and according to hugging experts, the ideal hug is 20 seconds long. You need to respect others' personal space and need to practice social distancing with the pandemic. But for those you are close to and those you live with, hugging is medicine. Your grandmother and mother knew this. As always, remember to call an elder. They've been waiting for your call. I'm Dr. Arnie Vinio, and this is Health Matters.
A 2021 role-playing book game explores what life would have been like if colonization never happened in the Americas. We talk with a member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, who is the Coyote Crow CEO, to learn what the sci-fi fantasy world is all about.
Hi, my name is Connor Alexander. I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma, and I have developed a tabletop role-playing game called Coyote and Crow. It is set in an alternate future where colonization never happened, and indigenous cultures throughout North and South America were allowed to flourish and thrive, and the game gives access to both native players and non-native players. Having worked in the game industry for quite a while, I saw a lot of native representation in games that was less than stellar. A lot of times we're painted as either opponents for colonial forces, we're painted as side characters or even villains in Western settings. Within the game design community, I think what was really frustrating was that a lot of times you had non-Indigenous publishers who were creating these games and these systems and attaching Indigenous themes to them. And maybe if we were lucky, we got some sort of consultation before it went to print, and it was a case of, yeah, this isn't offensive. And I feel like that's the lowest bar you can set. Like, that is the absolute lowest bar. This isn't offensive, right? So having worked in the industry and on sort of the back side of it for quite a while, and having been a game player my whole life, I started thinking about what I would want to see in game representation, in a game that was not just the minimum, but actually had some real representation built into it. I didn't want to create just another game that was set in Revolutionary War. I didn't want to create a game that was set during the Old West, just nothing in the past. I thought, let's give Native folks a game that set something in a future. I grew up gaming, played tabletop games my whole life, whether it was board games or role-playing games. So tabletop role-playing games are a little different than board games in that they are not based on winners or losers. They're based on cooperative storytelling. And so you have one player who plays the story guide role. Think of it as the narrator in a book. That person sets up the story, they set up the environment, they set up the antagonists and all the side characters.
Okay, we're just gonna go in the order of the book. You have a motivation.
My motivation is
Okay, perfect. So you have a strict code of honor and strive to live up to it. What code do you follow? So you got it.
The players each take on the role of one of the protagonists in the story. And the thing I love about tabletop role-playing games, since I was a kid, playing Dungeons and Dragons as a kid, is that it tapped into the same thing that so many indigenous cultures are wonderful at, which is storytelling, crafting really great stories. And so I wanted to marry these two in a way that allowed story guides in our game to craft new stories and then pull these players in a way that let them have agency within that story. And they can bring their own tribal or national traditions into the game if they want. Or if you're a non-native player, you can just go with what's in the book. We have sort of a generic setting for the book that allows non-native players to play within the game where they're not being appropriative.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, I want to honor my community and make sure wear scrum.
And you have an archetype?
Yes, of the seeker.
And so a seeker, seekers range from detectives to philosophers to sociologists to bounty hunters, relying on attention to details and the uncovering of hidden things. So you'd be really well suited for this whole mission.
The PDF we just launched. The PDF is available for download now. Backers have already received that, and you can get it through our website or through the Kickstarter page. Has a link to where you can order it. The physical book we're still working on. We're hoping for March or April for of 2022 for a physical release. And while Coyote and Crow could have just been a book, I'm proud to say that we're now turning into a publishing company. And my hope is that along the way, I can help uplift other Native creators and see some more great Native games published. I have not yet been asked if there's going to be a Coyote and Crow board game, just a regular family style board game. And there is. I'm working on it right now with two other developers. Non-natives were very respectfully saying, hey, how do we approach this game in a way where we can tell stories where we're not stepping on anyone's toes here? And so one of the first things I thought was, well, we need to start getting Native writers in here to start telling Native stories that can be used in this game. They call them, in other games, they call them adventures or modules, but they're sort of stepping off stones for telling stories. Right now, we've got 10 different writers working with 10 different artists telling stories from all over the continent.
Yeah, so the Sieta are feared by some, respected by many, operating with impunity and above the laws that they enforce. At the same time, they are held to a very high standard and go through rigorous physical, moral, and spiritual training.
I have both Cherokee roots and Chicano roots, and my father was deeply ashamed of both. And I spent a lot of time fighting that and going against that grain. And now as an older person looking down, one of the things that was really important for me in this game was trying to create a message that was a positive statement for younger kids. Because I know younger kids, when they get into role-playing games, I know how it was for me, you really sort of idealize those characters on the page. And I wanted to create a positive representation. I put my heart into it. So for me, this game was a little bit cathartic, and it was a personal statement. I kind of want to refute what my father stood for there.
You just heard about a book game based on an alternate future Earth where colonization never happened after a climate disaster changed history. The game is in a world of science and spirituality where the future of technology and legends of the past will collide. It was created and led by a team of natives representing more than a dozen tribes.
There's no lack of superheroes in our times, but there is a lack of native superheroes created by natives themselves. Here to change that is the New Adventures of Super Indian comic series all about a native superhero.
The superhero was created by a member of the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma. How did Super Indian gain his powers, and what does he hope to accomplish with them?
I'm Aragon Starr. I am an enrolled member of the Kickapoo tribe of Oklahoma. My mom is enrolled in the Muskogee Nation here, and she's also Cherokee and Seneca. And I am many things, but a lot of people know me as a comic book author and writer and artist. So Super Indian, in the smallest nutshell that I can break it down to, is he ate tainted commodity cheese and gained superpowers. And he is part of a fictional tribe called the Leaning Oak, which really is the tribe of the mind. Well, Super Indian by day is a janitor at the Leaning Oak Bingo Hall. He's just your ordinary reservation boy doing ordinary things. He lives with his mother and father. And part of this whole transformation with the commodity cheese, he's gained the power of flight. He's super strong. Sometimes he has ice breath. Sometimes he's got fire breath. Because these powers are in development, there's really no telling what he can do. The first edition of Super Indian has a glossary because a lot of people were going, what is a 49? And I thought, okay, well, we'll give a kind of explanation about what that is. Oddly enough, this whole comic did not start as a comic per se. It started as a radio series, and that was produced back in 2007 and distributed nationwide.
Hey, I'm Hubert Logan. I was born and raised here on the Leaning Oak Reservation. Our reservation is a beautiful place, but right now, I'm doing my job as a janitor at the Leaning Oak Bingo Hall. There's my grandma Logan, on another hot streak. Get it, Grandma? See, I'm more than just a bingo hall maintenance engineer. I am more than the son of Mick and Carrie Logan. Go on, play the stereotypical native music.
Native Americans have always had heroes. Chief Joseph, Tecumseh, Geronimo, Jim Thorpe. Once in a generation, a hero comes to the aid of a nation in need.
Pretty good, huh? My cousin Anthony thought that up. What I'm trying to tell you is... Oh, let me put this trash can between you, me, and the security camera. I'm Super Indian. Is this thing on?
There's a lot of villains on the reservation, as there are everywhere, as you might know. Facing Super Indian is a villain named Blood Quantum. And again, that's a play on the old trope of a vampire. But this vampire wants to become a full-blood Indian by biting other full-bloods. With the whole issue of Blood Quantum, it's like, I'm more Indian than you are. It's like, what? Or it's that urban versus reservation. I grew up on a reservation, so I'm more Indian than you. There's just these weird little things that we have in our community that are like, okay. And I'm trying to draw them into the absurd, and hopefully people can, maybe see themselves in that and maybe change course a little bit, I hope. I really wanted people to see a native female superhero as well, but these two are going to work together in the future, and then there will be others. We still have to deal with a lot of these stereotypes of, the silent stoic and the mystical shaman and that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, please. There are tropes. There's the super tracker, and then often they've had characters that are white and decide that they learn all the Indian things and become more Indian and more amazing than the Indian people themselves, which is like, what? There's some real strange stuff out there. He kind of fights the things that we're all fighting as Native people: cultural appropriation and wannabes and New Agers, and sometimes our own people who, I'm more Indian than you are, and I have more superpowers than you will ever have, and, things like that, where you just go, okay, I thought we were supposed to be helping each other, but okay, let's roll with it. There's more of us doing this work now. When I first started this back in 2007, good gosh, there was like maybe one other person that was Native that was doing this. And all of the other Native superheroes were created by non-Indians, drawn by non-Indians. They were on the pages of Marvel and DC. And I thought, none of those folks resonate with me. I don't see the humor in these characters. I wanted something that was fun, that showed our humor, but also our strengths in our community, because I think that, again, is all Native American. That's one of our big superpowers, is our community. I've always loved comics, and I think that there are other Native people like me that long to see themselves in the pages of a funny book, where we're in control of the story and in control of the art and how we're portrayed.
The comic series creator says her Super Indian work has even been incorporated into some college curriculum. And here's a fun fact about her. She was raised in various cities across the country along with her Navy family. She also has been drawing since she could hold a pencil and does all the Super Indian artwork herself. If you missed a show or want to catch up online, find us at nativereport.org and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram for behind-the-scene updates. And drop a comment on social media if you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for spending time with your friends and neighbors from across Indian Country. I'm Ernie Stevens.
And I'm Rita Karppinen. We'll see you next time on Native Report.
Partial funding of this episode of Native Report is provided by the citizens of Minnesota through the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund.